Maggie Sullivan pressed her palm against the splintered church wall, steadying herself as the 26th man turned his back. Her fingers trembled, not from cold, from the weight of being unwanted her entire life. "Ain't nobody here fool enough to take damaged goods," someone muttered. Then the church door burst open. Snow swirled in, and a man with dead eyes walked straight toward her, while two small figures, twins, no more than 5, clutched his coat and stared at Maggie like she was the answer to a prayer they'd stopped believing in. What happened next changed everything. Stay until the end and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The church smelled of pine smoke and desperation. Maggie Sullivan stood at the front of Willow Creek's only house of worship, her boots leaking her fingers numb inside gloves that had been mended 17 times. December wind screamed outside, rattling windows that hadn't been properly sealed since the place was built. Reverend Marcus Stone cleared his throat. "Gentlemen, Miss Sullivan has traveled from Philadelphia. She seeks honest work and a good home. Who among you will step forward?" Silence. Maggie kept her chin up. She'd learned long ago that showing weakness only invited cruelty. But inside, something she'd protected for 29 years was cracking. 26 men stood in that church. Ranchers, miners, shopkeepers, widowers. All of them needing wives. All of them needing someone to warm their beds and raise their children and work beside them through brutal winters. The mail-order bride agency had promised her that Wyoming men were desperate for women. They hadn't mentioned that desperation had limits. "Look at them hands," someone whispered. "Factory hands. She'll be useless on a ranch." "How old is she? 30, 35, 29? Maggie said clearly, her voice cutting through the whispers like a blade. "I'm 29 years old. I've worked since I was 11. I can sew, cook, clean, and manage a household. I can read and write and do figures. I don't need pretty things or easy work." She paused, meeting their eyes one by one. "I just need a chance." More silence. Then a woman's laugh, high and sharp, like ice cracking on a frozen river. "How inspiring!" The voice belonged to Harriet Whitmore, wife of the wealthiest rancher in 3 counties. She sat in the front pew, wrapped in furs that probably cost more than Maggie had earned in 5 years of factory work. "A factory girl who can sew." Harriet's lips curled. Surely that's worth a lifetime commitment. Maggie turned to face her. "I'm not asking for commitment, ma'am. I'm asking for a chance to prove my worth." "Worth." Harriet's eyebrows rose. "My dear, your worth was determined the moment you stepped off that stage. These men have eyes. They can see exactly what you're worth." Heat flooded Maggie's face. Not from embarrassment. From fury. The kind of fury she'd learned to swallow during 18 years of being treated as disposable. "Then I reckon I'll find my worth on my own," Maggie said. "Thank you for your time, gentlemen. I'll trouble you no further." She stepped down from the small platform where the Reverend had positioned her like livestock at auction. Her boots clicked against the wooden floor, loud in the terrible silence. She could feel every eye on her back, pitying, dismissing, already forgetting. The church door was 15 feet away. 10. 5. She reached for the handle. "Wait!" The voice came from behind her, deep, rough, tired. The voice of a man who'd forgotten how to use it for anything but giving orders. Maggie turned. He stood in the shadows near the back of the church, half hidden by a wooden pillar. She hadn't noticed him before, hadn't counted him among the 26 who'd rejected her. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a coat that had seen better decades. His face was weathered jaw covered in stubble that said he'd stopped caring about appearances long ago. But his eyes, dark brown, almost black in the dim light, those eyes were looking at her like she was something worth seeing. And beside him, clutching his coat with small, desperate hands, stood 2 children, twins. A boy and a girl, no more than 5 years old. Their faces were pale, their eyes huge. The little girl was staring at Maggie like she'd seen a ghost. "I'll take her," the man said. The church erupted. "Tom Harding, you can't be serious." That man's already got 4 children. His last 3 housekeepers ran off before spring. She'll never survive out at his place. The man called Tom ignored them all. He walked forward, his boots heavy on the floor, his gaze never leaving Maggie's face. The twins moved with him, still clutching his coat, their small bodies pressed against his legs. When he reached her, he stopped, tipped his hat. The gesture was old-fashioned, almost courtly, completely at odds with his rough appearance. "Ma'am," he said, "I'm Thomas Harding. I've got a ranch 10 miles north of here, 4 children who need tending, a house that needs managing. It's hard work and the winters are harder, but I keep my word, and I'll treat you fair." Maggie studied him. "Why me? Pardon. 26 men in this church, not one of them would have me. Why you?" Something flickered in his dark eyes. Pain, maybe, or recognition. "Because I know what it's like to stand somewhere while everyone decides you ain't worth their time," he said quietly. "And I know that sometimes the ones nobody wants are the ones who work the hardest, because they've got something to prove." The little girl tugged at her father's coat. "Papa," she whispered. "Papa, is she gonna stay?" Tom. Harding's jaw tightened. He didn't answer his daughter. He just kept looking at Maggie. "I've got 12 cents to my name," Maggie said. "I've got nowhere to sleep tonight. You could be offering me anything and I'd have to take it. You sure you want someone that desperate?" "Desperate ain't the same as weak, Miss Sullivan. I've been desperate myself. Still am most days." He held out his hand. "So, you coming or not?" Maggie looked at his hand, calloused, scarred, the hand of a man who'd worked harder than most people could imagine. Then she looked at his face, searching for the cruelty that experience had taught her to expect from men who held power over her. She found none. Then she looked down at the twins. The little boy had pressed his face against his father's leg, too shy to look at her. But the little girl was staring at Maggie with an intensity that seemed too heavy for a 5-year-old to carry. "Please," the girl whispered. So quiet Maggie almost didn't hear it. "Please come home with us." Maggie's throat tightened. "I'm coming," she said, and placed her hand in his. The wagon waited outside, already loaded with supplies. A sturdy gray horse stamped impatiently in the cold breath, steaming in the frozen air. "Climb up," Tom said, offering his hand to help her onto the bench. "We need to move. Storm's coming and I want to be home before it hits." Maggie settled onto the hard wooden seat. Her coat was too thin for Wyoming winters, a Philadelphia coat meant for city cold, not frontier cold. Already she could feel the chill seeping through, finding every gap, every weakness. Tom lifted the twins into the wagon bed, settling them among blankets and supplies. Then he climbed up beside Maggie, gathered the reins, and clicked to the horse. The wagon lurched forward. Behind them, faces pressed against the church windows. Watching, judging, already spinning stories about the desperate woman and the broken rancher. "Let 'em look," Tom said, as if reading her thoughts. "They'll talk no matter what we do. Might as well give them something to talk about." "Do they talk about you often?" "Some." He kept his eyes on the road ahead. "My wife died 2 years back. Folks expected me to remarry quick, get someone to help with the children. When I didn't, they started talking. Said I was touched by grief. Said I couldn't let go. Said my children were running wild." "Were they right about the grief?" "Yes." "About your children?" A ghost of something not quite a smile crossed his weathered face. "They ain't wild. They're just lost. Same as me." The town fell away behind them. Buildings gave way to endless white prairie. The wind picked up driving snow into their faces. "Tell me about them," Maggie said. "Your children." Tom was quiet for a moment, as if organizing thoughts he rarely shared. "Samuel's 14. Sam. He's the oldest. Takes everything too serious. Tries to be the man of the house when he should still be a boy. His hands tightened on the reins. He'll be the hardest to win over. He remembers his mother best. And the others? Emmeline's 11. Emmy. Quiet girl. Loves her books. Watches everything, says little. She's been waiting for someone to teach her what her mother would have taught her, but she won't admit it. Maggie nodded, filing away each detail. Benjamin's 8. Ben. All energy, no direction. Gets into everything. Breaks half of what he touches. Something softened almost imperceptibly in Tom's voice. But he's got a good heart under all that chaos. He needs attention, and I haven't had enough to give. And the twins. Tom glanced back at the wagon bed where the two small figures huddled together under a blanket. Rosie and Jack, just turned 5. His voice roughened. They don't remember their mother much anymore. Sarah died when they were 3. Rosie carries a rag doll Sarah made before... He stopped. His jaw tightened. Before she got sick. Maggie waited. Rosie's scared of people leaving. Tom continued quietly. You need to understand that going in. She'll attach to you fast, and if you leave, it'll break something in her that might not ever mend. I won't leave. Tom glanced at her. You say that now. I mean it now too. The last 3 women I hired said the same thing. First one lasted 2 weeks, said it was too isolated, too much work, too cold. Second one made it to February before she packed her things in the middle of the night and walked to town. Didn't even say goodbye to the children. Maggie felt anger flare in her chest. Not at Tom, at those women. At anyone who could look at grieving children and decide their own comfort mattered more. And the third? Stayed 4 months. The children started to trust her. Tom's voice went flat. Then she got a better offer, married a shopkeeper in town, left the day after Rosie called her mama for the first time. Something cold settled in Maggie's stomach. I'm not them, she said. No. Tom agreed slowly. I don't reckon you are. They rode in silence for a while. The only sounds were the creak of the wagon, the horses breathing, the endless whisper of wind through snow. Maggie's fingers were going numb despite her gloves. She tucked them under her arms for warmth. Tom noticed. Without a word, he reached behind the seat and produced a heavy wool blanket, draping it over her lap. Thank you, Maggie said, surprised by the gesture. Can't have you freezing before we get there. My children are expecting someone who can cook supper. Is that all they're expecting? Tom was quiet for a long moment. They're expecting someone who will leave. That's what they've learned. That people leave. Their mother left not by choice, but she left all the same. Everyone since then has left by choice. So they'll test you, push you, see how far they have to go before you give up on them. And what should I do when they push? Push back. He glanced at her, and something like respect flickered in his eyes. But gentle, firm but gentle. Let them know you see what they're doing and you're staying anyway. The road curved, climbing a gentle rise. When they crested it, Tom pulled the wagon to a stop. There, he said, pointing. Maggie looked down into a valley sheltered by a ring of hills. She saw a main house 2 stories built solid against the weather, a barn, several outbuildings, a corral with a few horses huddled against the wind. Smoke rose from the chimney, a thin gray ribbon against the heavy white sky. It's not much, Tom said, but it's home. Something in Maggie's chest loosened. It wasn't a grand estate. It wasn't the fancy Philadelphia house where she'd been falsely accused and cast out like garbage. It was a working ranch, practical and plain. Exactly the kind of place where people survived by their own labor and nobody pretended to be anything they weren't. It looks like home, she said quietly. Tom looked at her strangely, as if she'd said something unexpected. Then he clicked to the horse and started down toward the valley. The front door burst open before the wagon had fully stopped. 4 faces appeared on the porch, 2 older children standing rigid. Two smaller figures the twins had somehow scrambled out of the wagon bed and raced ahead. Maggie studied the older ones, quickly matching faces to the descriptions Tom had given her. Sam stood at the front, tall for 14, dark hair windblown, expression guarded. His eyes blue like winter ice, fixed on Maggie with open suspicion. Emmy hovered beside him, brown braids escaping their ribbons, a book clutched to her chest like armor. She was watching Maggie with the careful attention of a child who'd learned that observation was safer than participation. Ben appeared behind them, bouncing on his toes, unable to stand still. His face split with curiosity and barely contained energy. He was already talking before anyone else could speak. "Is that her? Is that the lady? She looks cold. Is she gonna stay? Can she cook? Can she—" "Ben." Sam's voice was sharp. "Quiet." The boy subsided, but his eyes never left Maggie, and on the porch the twins had already positioned themselves. Rosie stood clutching a faded rag doll. Her blonde hair tangled, her brown eyes huge with uncertainty. Jack pressed against his sister, thumb in his mouth, watching. Tom climbed down from the wagon and reached up to help Maggie. His hands were steady, warm despite the cold. "Children," he said, turning to face them. "This is Miss Maggie Sullivan. She's going to be staying with us, helping with the house, helping with you." "For how long?" Sam asked immediately. "For as long as she wants to stay." "So she'll leave too?" The boy's voice was flat, dismissive, just like the others. Maggie stepped forward before Tom could respond. "You're Sam," she said. The boy blinked, surprised to be addressed directly. "Yeah. So, your father told me about you on the ride here, said you're serious, responsible, that you've been trying to fill your father's shoes and your mother's shoes all at once." Sam's jaw tightened. "Someone had to." "That's true. Someone did. And you stepped up when no one else could. That takes strength." Maggie held his gaze. "But here's the thing about carrying that much weight. Eventually it breaks you. Not because you're weak, because no one person should have to carry everything alone." "What do you know about it?" "I know I've been carrying weight since I was 11 years old, working in factories, taking care of myself because no one else would, fighting to survive every single day." Maggie's voice was steady. "I know exactly what it costs, Sam. And I know that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let someone help." The boy stared at her. His expression shifted from hostility to something more complicated. Confusion, maybe, or the first flicker of respect. "That doesn't mean you're staying," he said finally. "No." Maggie agreed. "It doesn't. Only time will prove that. So I guess we'll both have to wait and see." Emmy stepped forward, her book still pressed to her chest. "Can you read?" "Yes." "Really read, not just a little." "I've read Shakespeare and Dickens and anything else I could get my hands on. Reading was the only escape I had in the factories." Something flickered in Emmy's eyes. Hope quickly suppressed. "Oh, that's good." Ben pushed between his siblings, unable to contain himself any longer. "Can you cook?" "Pa's cooking is terrible. I mean, he tries, but it's really, really bad. Sam's is worse. Emmy burned the beans last week and—" "Ben." Sam and Emmy spoke in unison, both flushing. Maggie felt a smile tugging at her lips. "I can cook. I used to make bread that people lined up to buy." "Real bread." Ben's eyes went wide. "Not the flat kind that tastes like rocks. Real bread, soft and warm with butter melting into it." "Real bread." "I like you already." "Ben, you can't just—" Sam started. "Can I like her? She's nice and she can make bread." Maggie laughed a real laugh, the first one in longer than she could remember. "You can reserve judgment, Ben. That's probably wiser. I might burn the bread. You never know." "You won't," the boy said with absolute certainty. "I can tell." The only ones who hadn't spoken were the twins. Rosie still hovered on the porch, her rag doll dangling from one hand, her eyes fixed on Maggie, with an intensity that seemed too heavy for a 5-year-old. Jack had moved behind his sister, peering out from behind her shoulder. Maggie crouched down, making herself smaller, less threatening. "Hello, Rosie. Hello, Jack." Her voice was gentle. "I like your doll, Rosie. What's her name?" Rosie clutched the doll tighter. "Annie." "That's a beautiful name. Did you choose it?" A tiny headshake. "Mama named her." Maggie's heart clenched. "Your mama had good taste in names." Rosie studied her for a long moment, her small face solemn. Then she whispered something to Jack. The boy nodded. "Are you going to sleep here?" Rosie asked. "If your father says I can, yes." "Are you going to sleep here forever?" The question hung in the cold air, weighted with everything a 5-year-old couldn't say, but somehow understood. "I'm going to sleep here for as long as your father will have me," Maggie said carefully. "I can't promise forever. Nobody can promise that. But I can promise that if I ever have to leave, I'll tell you first. I won't disappear in the night. I won't leave without saying goodbye." Rosie considered this. Promise? Promise. The little girl looked at her brother. Something passed between them, that silent communication twins sometimes share. Then Rosie walked forward, slowly, carefully, and slipped her small hand into Maggie's. "Okay," Rosie said. "You can come inside now. It's cold." She tugged Maggie's hand. "Jack wants to come too, but he's shy. He won't say nothing for a while. But he likes you. I can tell." Jack emerged from behind the porch railing, his thumb still in his mouth. He didn't take Maggie's other hand, but he walked beside her, close enough that his small shoulder brushed against her skirt. Behind them, Maggie heard Tom's sharp intake of breath. She glanced back. He was staring at his children, at the twins who hadn't willingly touched a stranger in 2 years, with an expression she couldn't quite read. Grief, maybe. Or hope. Or both. The house was warmer than Maggie had expected. A large stone fireplace dominated the main room, flames crackling against the cold. But warmth was relative. She could still see her breath in the corners farthest from the fire, and the windows were rimmed with frost. She surveyed the space quickly. The main room served as kitchen, dining area, and living space. A large wooden table with mismatched chairs, shelves lined with dishes, pots and supplies in varying states of organization. A rocking chair near the fireplace empty, with a woman's shawl still draped over its back. Maggie looked away from the shawl. Some things weren't hers to touch. Not yet. Maybe not ever. "I'll show you to your room," Tom said. "It's small, but it's private. Used to be the sewing room." "That's fine. I don't need much space." They walked down a short hallway. The children followed at a distance, watching, whispering among themselves. Maggie could feel their eyes on her back, measuring, judging, waiting to see what kind of person she would prove to be. Tom opened a door at the end of the hall. "Here." The room was indeed small. Just enough space for a narrow bed, a dresser with a cracked mirror, and a small trunk at the foot of the bed. But it had a window that looked out toward the hills, and the bed had clean sheets. "It's perfect," Maggie said, and meant it. Tom nodded, hovering in the doorway. "Supper's usually at 6. The children have their chores. I'll explain those tomorrow. Tonight. Just settle in. Get warm. You've had a long day." "Mr. Harding," he paused. "Thank you for stepping forward, for giving me a chance when no one else would." Something shifted in his expression. Pain. Gratitude. Something complicated that she couldn't quite read. "Don't thank me yet, Miss Sullivan. You haven't seen how hard it gets." "I've seen hard, Mr. Harding. This—" She gestured around her at the small room, the distant sound of children arguing, the wind howling outside. "This is just different. Different isn't the same as hard." He studied her for a moment, as if seeing her clearly for the first time. "Maybe you're right," he said quietly. "Maybe you're exactly what we needed." He left, closing the door behind him. Maggie sat on the edge of the bed. Her whole body started to shake now that she was finally alone. Not from cold. From the release of tension she'd been holding since she'd stepped off that stage in Willow Creek. She'd done it. She'd found a place, not a home, not yet, but a place where she might build one. From the main room she could hear voices. Sam's sharp and suspicious. She won't last, none of them do. Emmy's quieter. Maybe she's different. Ben's enthusiastic. She can make bread, Sam. Real bread. And underneath it all, Tom's low rumble, too quiet for her to make out the words. She touched the bed, the dresser, the frost-covered window. Real things. Solid things. Things that wouldn't disappear when William Crawford decided he wanted them. William. The thought of him hit her like cold water. He was still out there, still looking for her, still believing she belonged to him, that she'd stolen from him when she'd taken nothing but her own dignity and fled. She'd told herself that Wyoming was far enough, that the frontier was wild enough to swallow a woman and keep her hidden. But standing in that church today, feeling the eyes of strangers cataloging her worth, she'd realized something terrible. She wasn't hidden. She was exposed. A mail-order bride from Philadelphia arrived in December, rejected by 26 men. That was a story. Stories traveled. Stories could be traced. If William was looking, and he was always looking, he would find her eventually. But that was a problem for another day. Today, she had a different battle to fight. 4 children who expected her to leave. A rancher who'd forgotten how to hope. And a winter that was trying its best to kill them all. Maggie straightened her shoulders. She'd survived William Crawford's hands on her in darkened hallways. She'd survived the factory that broke women's backs and spirits. She'd survived the train ride west with nothing but 12 cents and a stubborn refusal to give up. She would survive this too. A knock on her door. Small. Hesitant. "Come in," Maggie said. The door opened to reveal Rosie still clutching Annie. Jack stood behind her, his thumb in his mouth, his eyes wide. "We wanted to see if you were still here," Rosie said. "I'm still here. Sometimes people are here and then they're not. They go away while you're sleeping." Maggie's heart broke a little. She held out her hand. "Come here, sweetheart." Rosie crossed the small room and climbed onto the bed beside Maggie. Jack followed, pressing against his twin's other side. "I'm not going to disappear while you're sleeping," Maggie said gently. "When you wake up tomorrow, I'll be here. And the day after that. And the day after that. Promise. Promise." Rosie leaned against Maggie's side. Her small body relaxed. Jack's thumb popped out of his mouth. "Okay," Rosie said. "Annie believes you. Annie's good at knowing who to believe." "Then I'm glad Annie believes me. That means a lot." Jack tugged at Maggie's sleeve. She looked down at him, this silent little boy who hadn't spoken a word since she'd arrived. "What is it, Jack?" He pointed at the window, at the snow falling thick and fast outside. Then he pointed at the fireplace in the main room, then at Maggie. "I think," Rosie translated, "he wants to know if you'll be warm enough. He worries about people being cold." Maggie felt her throat tighten. "I'll be warm enough, Jack. I promise." The little boy nodded solemnly. Then, in a movement that surprised everyone, maybe even himself, he reached out and patted Maggie's hand. Just once, just gently. Then he pulled back his face, flushing his thumb, returning to his mouth. But he didn't move away. They sat together into the fading afternoon light, the wind howling outside, the house creaking around them. 3 strangers, 1 who'd lost everything, 2 who'd never had enough, beginning the slow, uncertain work of becoming something more. From down the hall, Tom's voice called, "Rosie, Jack, where'd you go?" "We're with Miss Maggie," Rosie shouted back. "We're helping her feel not alone." A pause. Then Tom appeared in the doorway. His expression was unreadable. He looked at his children, his twins, who hadn't willingly spent time with any of the previous housekeepers, curled against the stranger's sides like they'd known her their whole lives. "Supper's almost ready," he said quietly. "You're welcome to join us, All three of you." Maggie nodded. She lifted Jack onto her hip. He let her, didn't flinch, didn't pull away, and took Rosie's hand. "We'll be right there." Tom watched them for a moment longer. Something in his expression shifted the first crack in that wall of grief and weariness he'd built around himself. Then he nodded and walked away. Rosie patted Maggie's cheek with one small hand. "I'm hungry." "Then let's go eat." "Will there be bread?" "Not tonight. But tomorrow I'll make some. I promise." "You promise a lot of things." Maggie smiled, the first real smile she'd given since arriving in Wyoming. "I know. But here's the thing about promises, Rosie. The only way they mean anything is if you keep them. So I only promise things I can do." Rosie considered this with the gravity of a child who'd learned too young that adults didn't always keep their word. "Okay," she said finally. "I'll wait and see. That's all I ask." They walked out together into the warmth of the main room, toward the family waiting around the table. Sam's suspicious eyes, Emmy's careful hope, Ben's irrepressible enthusiasm, and Tom standing by the stove watching Maggie with an expression she couldn't quite read. Outside, the storm hit with full-force snow driving against the windows, wind screaming around the corners of the house. They were trapped here now, all of them together, with no choice but to figure out how to survive each other. Maggie took her seat at the table. Rosie refused to let go of her hand. Jack climbed into the chair beside her, scooting it closer until their arms touched. "Well," Tom said, his voice gruff as he served out portions of stew that looked marginally better than what Ben had described. "Welcome to the Harding Ranch, Miss Sullivan. I hope you're ready for the hardest winter of your life." Maggie looked around the table, at the faces watching her, weary, hopeful, desperate, lost. Then she picked up her spoon and took a bite of stew. "I've been getting ready for this my whole life," she said. "I just didn't know it until today." And somewhere deep in her chest, in the place where hope had been frozen solid for years, something small and warm began to thaw. The first week tested everything Maggie thought she knew about survival. She woke before dawn on that second morning, her body stiff from the thin mattress, her breath visible in the frigid air of her small room. For a moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then it came back. The church, the rejection. Tom Harding's rough voice saying, "I'll take her." She dressed quickly in the darkness, her fingers clumsy with cold, and made her way to the kitchen. Tom was already there. He stood at the stove, struggling with the fire, cursing softly under his breath. When he heard her footsteps, he turned. Surprise flickered across his weathered face. "You're up early." "So are you." "Ranch doesn't run itself, especially not in winter." He gestured at the stove. "Damn thing won't catch properly. Flu's been temperamental since October." Maggie moved to his side, studying the arrangement of kindling and logs. "May I?" He stepped back, watching as she adjusted the flue, rearranged the kindling, and coaxed a small flame to life. Within minutes, the fire was burning steadily. "Where'd you learn that?" "Factory dormitories. 40 women sharing 3 stoves. You learn fast or you freeze." He nodded slowly. Something like respect flickered in his dark eyes. "Coffee's in the tin on the shelf. I usually just make it strong enough to wake the dead." "I'll see what I can do." They worked in silence for a while. Maggie preparing coffee while Tom pulled on his coat and boots. The easy quiet between them felt strange. Comfortable in a way she hadn't expected. "I'll be in the barn," he said, pausing at the door. "Cattle need tending. One of the horses has been favoring her left leg. Children usually wake around 7. Sam knows the morning routine." "I'll have breakfast ready." Tom hesitated, his hand on the doorframe. "Miss Sullivan?" "Yes?" "Yesterday, in the church. What you said about standing somewhere while everyone decides you ain't worth their time." He didn't look at her. "I meant what I said. I know that feeling. And I know what it costs to keep standing anyway." Before she could respond, he was gone. The door closed behind him, letting in a blast of frozen air that made the fire sputter. Maggie stood alone in the kitchen, her heart doing something complicated in her chest. Then she shook herself and got to work. By the time the children stumbled out of their rooms, she had coffee brewing, eggs frying, and the first batch of biscuits nearly ready. The smell filled the house, warm and inviting, pushing back against the winter cold. Ben appeared first, his hair sticking up in all directions, his eyes going wide when he saw the stove. "You're cooking." That's generally what happens in a kitchen. But it smells good. He crept closer, peering at the biscuits through the oven window. "It smells really good." "Thank you. Set the table, please. Plates are on the shelf." Ben blinked clearly, unused to being given tasks so directly. But he moved to obey, pulling down plates with more enthusiasm than care. Emmy came next, already dressed, her braids neater than they'd been yesterday. She paused in the doorway, taking in the scene. Maggie at the stove. Ben setting the table. The smell of actual food cooking. "You're still here," she said quietly. "I told you I would be." The last one said that too. She left on the third day. Maggie flipped the eggs, keeping her voice steady. "I'm not her." "How do I know that?" "You don't, not yet. But you will if you give me time." Emmy considered this, her book clutched to her chest as always. "What are you reading?" Maggie asked, nodding toward the worn cover. "Jane Eyre." The girl hesitated. "Ma gave it to me. Before—" She stopped. Her face closed. "Before. That's one of my favorites. Jane's had a hard life, but she never loses herself. Never becomes cruel even when people are cruel to her." Emmy's eyes widened slightly. "You've read it?" "3 times. I used to read it when things got bad at the factory. Reminded me that survival doesn't have to mean losing who you are." Something shifted in Emmy's expression, the first crack in her careful armor. "Maybe," she said slowly, "maybe we could talk about it sometime. About the book." "I'd like that." Sam appeared last, fully dressed, his expression already set in that guarded mask Maggie was beginning to recognize. He stopped short when he saw the kitchen, his eyes narrowing. "What are you doing?" "Making breakfast." "Pa usually does that." "Your father's in the barn. I thought I'd help." Maggie began transferring eggs onto plates. "Sit down. Food's ready." Sam didn't move. "We don't need your help." "Sam." Maggie set down the pan and turned to face him. "I know you don't trust me. I know you're waiting for me to leave just like everyone else left. And I know that every morning I'm still here it feels more dangerous. Because the longer I stay, the more it'll hurt when I go." The boy's face went pale. "I didn't—" "But here's the thing." Maggie crossed to him, stopping close enough to see the fear beneath his anger. "I'm not planning to go. And every day I'm here, I'm going to do my job. Make meals, clean the house, help where I can. You can be angry about it, or you can accept it and let me make your life a little easier. Either way, I'm staying." Sam stared at her, his jaw working. For a moment, Maggie thought he might yell, might storm out, might do any of the things a 14-year-old boy did when he felt cornered. Instead, he sat down at the table. "The biscuits better be good," he muttered. "They're excellent, but you can judge for yourself." The twins wandered in just as Maggie was serving. Rosie appeared first, Annie dragging along the floor behind her. Jack followed, his thumb in his mouth, his eyes searching the room until they found Maggie. Rosie's face lit up. "You're still here." "Still here. Forever. Let's start with today and see how it goes." Rosie climbed into her chair, then patted the seat beside her. "Sit next to me." "I need to finish cooking." "After. Sit next to me after." "After." Jack tugged at Maggie's apron. She looked down at him. He pointed at his stomach, then at the biscuits, then gave her a hopeful look. "Hungry?" Maggie asked. He nodded vigorously. "Then let's get you fed." She lifted him into his chair, and his small hand caught hers for just a moment. a squeeze, quick and fierce. Then he let go his face, flushing his thumb returning to his mouth. But he was smiling around it. The door opened, bringing cold air, and Tom stamping snow from his boots. He stopped when he saw the table. 4 children eating. The kitchen warm and smelling of fresh food. Everything running smoothly. "You've been busy," he said. "I told you I could cook." Tom hung up his coat and moved to the table, taking his place at the head. He picked up a biscuit, examined it, took a bite. His eyebrows rose. "These are..." "Edible," Maggie offered. "Better than edible. These are..." He took another bite, chewing slowly. "Where'd you learn to cook like this?" "Same place I learned everything else. Necessity. When you grow up without much, you learn to make the most of what you have." Ben was already on his 3rd biscuit. "Can you make these every day, Pa? We need supplies. We need so many supplies. We need..." "Ben." Tom's voice carried warning, but his eyes were warm. One breakfast at a time. The meal continued in something approaching peace. Maggie ate standing by the stove, watching the family dynamics play out. Sam maintained his silence, but he ate everything on his plate. Emmy kept glancing at Maggie, then away, as if afraid to look too long. Ben talked enough for everyone. And the twins kept twisting around to make sure Maggie was still there. When the plates were empty, Tom stood. "Sam, Ben, you're with me. Cattle won't tend themselves." "But Pa..." Ben started. "No arguments. Get your coats." The boys left reluctantly, Ben casting longing glances at the remaining biscuits. Maggie wrapped 2 in a cloth and pressed them into his hands as he passed. "For later," she whispered. His face split into a grin. "You're the best. Remember that when your brother's being difficult." Tom paused at the door, looking back at her. "You'll be all right with the girls and Jack. We'll manage." He nodded once, then followed his sons into the winter morning. Maggie turned to find Emmy and the twins watching her expectantly. "Well," she said, "I suppose we should clean up." The morning passed faster than Maggie expected. She washed dishes while Emmy dried the girls' movements, careful and precise, as if afraid of breaking something. The twins sat at the table. Rosie was having an elaborate tea party with Annie and 3 imaginary friends. Jack had found a piece of string and was trying to make shapes with it, his small face scrunched in concentration. "She does that a lot," Emmy said quietly, nodding toward Rosie. "The pretend friends, they started after Ma died. It's how some children process grief, creating worlds they can control when the real world feels too scary." Emmy glanced at her. "How do you know that?" "I did something similar. When I was young and things were hard, I used to pretend I had a mother who would come back for me. Someone who'd take me away from the factory, give me a real home." Maggie handed over another plate. "I was older than Rosie before I stopped believing she might actually come." "Did she come back, I mean?" "No, she died before I was born, but the pretending it helped for a while. Gave me somewhere to go when reality was too much." Emmy was quiet for a moment. "Ma used to say that's what books were for. Places to go when you needed to escape." "Your ma sounds like she was very wise." "She was." Emmy's voice cracked slightly. "She was the wisest person I ever knew. And she got sick, and then she was gone, and nothing made sense anymore." Maggie set down the dish she was washing and turned to face the girl fully. "Emmy, can I tell you something?" The girl nodded, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Losing someone you love, it never makes sense. It's not supposed to. And anyone who tells you it will get easier is lying. It doesn't get easier. It just gets different. You learn to carry it differently. The weight. Some days it's heavier than others, but it never goes away completely." "Then what's the point?" Emmy's voice was barely a whisper. "What's the point of loving anyone if it hurts this much when they're gone? The point is that the love doesn't go away either. Your ma is gone, but the love she gave you that's still here, it's in the book she gave you, in the memories you carry. in the way you take care of the twins, the way you watch over your brothers even when they don't notice." Maggie crouched down to meet the girl's eyes. "That love is still alive, Emmy. It always will be." A tear slipped down Emmy's cheek. She brushed it away quickly, embarrassed. "Ma used to say something like that. She said love was like planting seeds. Even when the gardener's gone, the flowers keep blooming." She was right. Rosie looked up from her tea party, her small face concerned. "Emmy, why are you crying?" "I'm okay, Rosie." "Are you sad about Mama?" Emmy's breath caught. "A little." Rosie climbed down from her chair and walked over to her sister, wrapping small arms around Emmy's waist. Jack followed, pressing against Emmy's other side. "It's okay to be sad," Rosie said solemnly. "Annie says so. Annie says Mama would understand." Emmy hugged them both back, her tears flowing freely now. Maggie watched them, these children holding each other together, and thought about all the ways grief could break a family, and all the ways love could hold it together. The days that followed fell into a rhythm. Maggie woke early, started the fire, made breakfast. Tom went to tend the livestock while the children ate. Sam and Ben helped their father during the day. Emmy and the twins stayed with Maggie, learning the household tasks their mother had never had time to teach them. Each day, Maggie earned a little more ground. With Emmy, it was books. They started reading Jane Eyre together in the evenings, Maggie helping with the harder words, discussing the story in the quiet moments between chores. Emmy began to thaw her careful silence, giving way to actual conversation. With the twins, it was simpler. Rosie had adopted Maggie with the fierce possessiveness of a child who'd decided something belonged to her. She followed Maggie everywhere, helped with everything, and fell asleep each night with her hand wrapped in Maggie's. Jack still didn't speak, but he'd started sitting beside Maggie at meals, letting her cut his food, sometimes reaching out to touch her arm, as if reassuring himself she was real. With Ben, it was food. The boy was a bottomless pit of hunger and enthusiasm, and Maggie's cooking became the way to his heart. He started calling her Miss Maggie instead of the new lady, and began volunteering for kitchen duties just to be near the stove. With Sam was harder. The boy maintained his distance, speaking to Maggie only when necessary, watching her with those suspicious eyes that saw too much. He was waiting. Maggie knew, waiting for her to slip, to give up, to prove him right about what he expected. She didn't slip. On the 8th day, something changed. Maggie was kneading bread when she heard the shouting. Sam's voice high and furious. Ben's defensive. Then a crash. She ran. In the barn she found them. Sam had Ben pinned against a stall door, his fist raised. Ben's nose was bleeding. Both boys were crying. "What happened?" Maggie's voice cracked like a whip. Sam released his brother, stepping back. His face was red, his chest heaving. "He broke Ma's music box, the one Pa gave her. He broke it." "I didn't mean to," Ben was sobbing. "I was just looking at it. I wanted to hear the song. I didn't mean to drop it." "You broke everything. You always break everything." "Sam." Maggie moved between them. "Step back. He broke the only thing we had left of her voice. The only—" Sam's fury crumbled into something worse. Grief. Raw and terrible. She used to play it every night. She'd wind it up and we'd all listen, and she'd sing along, and now it's gone. Everything about her is gone. Maggie turned to Ben. "Go to the house. Clean up your face. I'll be there in a minute." The younger boy fled, still crying. Sam stood rigid, his hands clenched, his whole body shaking. "Go ahead," he said bitterly. "Tell me I shouldn't have hit him. Tell me it's just a thing. Tell me I need to control my temper." "I'm not going to tell you any of that." He looked up, startled. "I'm going to tell you that grief makes us do things we regret. That it's easier to be angry than sad. That hitting your brother didn't make you feel better, it made you feel worse. And that you already know all of this, which is why you're standing there hating yourself right now." Sam's face crumpled. I miss her so much," And every day she gets further away. Every day I forget a little more. What her voice sounded like, how she smelled, the way she used to say my name. His voice broke. I'm losing her, Miss Maggie. Piece by piece, I'm losing her. Maggie pulled him into her arms. He resisted for half a second. Then he collapsed against her, sobbing like the child he still was beneath all that forced maturity. You're not losing her, Maggie murmured against his hair. She's in you, Sam. In the way you protect your siblings. In the way you work so hard to hold this family together. In every single thing she taught you about being a good person. She held him tighter. She's not gone. She's just somewhere you can't see. But she's watching, and she's so proud of you. How do you know? Because I'd be proud of you, and I've only known you 8 days. Sam cried for a long time. Maggie held him through all of it. When the sobs finally subsided, he pulled back, wiping his face with his sleeve, embarrassed. I should apologize to Ben. Yes, you should. He really didn't mean to break it. I know. Sam hesitated. Miss Maggie. Yes. I'm sorry. For treating you like... He couldn't find the words. You were protecting yourself. Protecting your family. I understand that better than you know. He nodded slowly, then quietly. Maybe you could stay. For a while, if you wanted. Maggie smiled. I'm planning on it. That night after the children were in bed, Tom found her sitting by the fireplace, staring into the flames. Sam told me what happened, he said, taking the chair across from her. With the music box. With Ben. It was a hard day. Sam said you held him while he cried. Said you told him his mother was still watching over him. Tom's voice was rough. He hasn't cried since the funeral. 2 years, and he hasn't cried once. Say. Sometimes we need permission. Tom was quiet for a long moment. Then, the music box. Can I see it? Maggie pulled it from her apron pocket. She'd gathered the pieces after Sam had calmed down. The mechanism was intact. The case was cracked, but repairable. I think I can fix it, she said. I used to repair things at the factory. Small mechanisms. It might take a few days, but... Tom took the box from her hands, turned it over. His fingers traced the carved lid, a design of roses and vines. Sarah picked this out herself, he said softly. When we were courting. Said it reminded her of her grandmother's garden back in Kentucky. She used to play it every night while she brushed her hair. Sam told me. I haven't been able to look at it since she died. Couldn't bear to. He handed it back to Maggie. Fix it, please. The children should have it. I will. Their hands touched as she took the box. Neither of them pulled away. Miss Sullivan? Maggie. The word came out before she could stop it. After everything we've been through, I think you can call me Maggie. Something shifted in his expression. Something warm, dangerous. Something Maggie didn't want to examine too closely. Maggie, he repeated as if testing the weight of it. All right then, Maggie it is. On the 10th day, the letter arrived. Tom brought it in with the other mail, his face troubled. This came for you. Maggie took it. No return address. But she recognized the handwriting immediately. Her blood turned to ice. What is it? Tom asked, seeing her face. Nothing. The lie tasted bitter. Just nothing. She waited until she was alone to open it. The letter was short. 4 words. I know where you are. No signature. None needed. William Crawford had found her. Maggie stood in her small room, the letter crumpling in her fist, her whole body shaking. She'd run so far, hidden so carefully, built something here, something fragile and precious and real. And now he was coming to destroy it. She could leave, disappear again, protect this family from whatever violence William might bring. But leaving meant breaking her promise. Leaving meant proving Sam right about everything. Leaving meant abandoning Rosie and Jack, who had only just started to trust again. Leaving meant losing the first home she'd ever had. Maggie smoothed out the letter. Read those 4 words again. I know where you are. Good, she whispered to the empty room. Then come and get me. She was done running. Whatever happened next, she would face it here, with this family, in this home she'd chosen to make her own. She burned the letter in the fireplace that night. Watched the paper curl and blacken and turn to ash. Tom noticed her standing there staring into the flames. Everything all right? Yes, she said, and for the first time in years, she meant it. Everything's going to be fine. She didn't tell him about the letter. Not yet. But she started watching the horizon, started counting the days, started preparing for the storm she knew was coming. And every night when she tucked the twins into bed, when Jack's small hand found hers in the darkness, when Rosie whispered, "You'll be here tomorrow, right?" Maggie made the same promise. I'll be here tomorrow, and the day after that, and the day after that. She would keep that promise, no matter what it cost her. 3 weeks had passed since the letter arrived. Maggie had memorized the horizon, every ridge, every tree line, every shadow that moved across the snow. She watched for strangers the way a hunted animal watches for wolves, constantly quietly, with the patience of someone who knows danger is coming, but not when. The children noticed nothing. Tom noticed everything. "You've been different lately," he said one evening, finding her at the window again. "Jumpy, like you're waiting for something." "Just the winter," Maggie said. "It makes me restless." He didn't believe her. She could see it in his eyes, but he didn't push, not yet. Christmas was approaching. The children's excitement grew daily, filling the house with a warmth that had been absent for 2 years. Ben talked constantly about the Christmas social in town. Emmy had started secretly working on gifts for everyone, hiding her sewing whenever anyone came near. The twins had made a list for Santa Claus that included 27 items a pony, and for Miss Maggie to stay forever. That last one had made Maggie cry. She'd hidden in her room until the tears stopped. When she came out, Rosie was waiting. "Were you sad?" the little girl asked. "Happy sad," Maggie said. "Sometimes feelings get mixed up together." "Oh," Rosie considered this. "I get happy sad sometimes too, when I think about Mama, but also about you." That makes perfect sense. Annie thinks so too. The music box was nearly finished. Maggie had worked on it every night after the children slept, carefully fitting the pieces back together, testing the mechanism, making sure the melody played true. Sarah's song, whatever it had been, would live again. She planned to give it to Sam for Christmas. "The social is tomorrow," Tom announced at breakfast 3 days before Christmas. "Whole town will be there, dancing, food. Reverend Stone gives a speech that goes on too long every year." "Do we have to go?" Sam asked. "Yes." "But Pa, it's been 2 years since we showed our faces at a town gathering. People are starting to talk." Tom's jaw tightened. "More than they already do. The children need to see that life goes on. That we're not just surviving out here, we're living." Sam looked at Maggie. Something had changed between them since the day in the barn. The hostility was gone, replaced by a cautious alliance. He trusted her now. Not completely. Sam might never trust anyone completely, but enough. "Are you coming?" he asked her. "If your father wants me there." "I want you there," Tom said quietly. Something in his voice made Maggie's heart stumble. "You're part of this family now. Time the town knew it." The morning of the social, Maggie dressed in her best, a dark blue wool dress that Martha from the general store had helped her acquire. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean and fit well, and it would have to be enough. Rosie insisted on wearing her princess dress, a slightly too small frock that had been Emmy's. Jack allowed himself to be wrestled into clean clothes without complaint, though he kept his thumb firmly in his mouth the entire time. Emmy had tamed her braids into something elegant. Ben had actually combed his hair, and Sam stood by the wagon in his Sunday best, looking for all the world like a young man instead of a boy. "Ready?" Tom asked, helping Maggie onto the wagon bench. "As I'll ever be." The ride to town felt longer than usual. Waited with anticipation. Maggie sat beside Tom, achingly aware of the warmth of his arm pressed against hers in the cramped space. Behind them, the children chattered nervously, all except Jack, who sat in watchful silence. Willow Creek's town hall was already crowded when they arrived. Wagons lined the street, horses tied to every post, families streaming through the doors in their holiday finest. Maggie stepped down from the wagon and felt eyes turn toward her immediately. She straightened her shoulders and walked inside. The whispers started before she'd taken 10 steps. "There she is, the leftover bride. Can you imagine standing in that church while everyone—" Tom Harding must have lost his mind. Maggie kept walking. Her hand found Rosie's and squeezed gently. The little girl squeezed back. "Miss Sullivan?" The voice cut through the murmurs, sharp and commanding. Maggie turned to find Harriet Whitmore bearing down on her, resplendent in burgundy silk that probably cost more than Maggie would earn in a year. Several other well-dressed women flanked her. Their expressions ranged from curious to openly hostile. "Mrs. Whitmore." Maggie's voice was even. "How lovely to see you." "Is it—" Harriet's smile was poison-wrapped in politeness. "I imagine social gatherings must be somewhat uncomfortable for you, given your circumstances." "What circumstances would those be?" "Oh, come now, everyone knows." Harriet's eyes glittered. "A factory girl playing house with a widower and his children. Tell me, how are you finding life on the Harding Ranch? Quite a step down from whatever you left behind in Philadelphia, I'd imagine." "Actually," Maggie said, "it's quite a step up." Harriet's smile flickered. "I beg your pardon." "In Philadelphia, I worked 16-hour days in a factory for pennies. I slept in a dormitory with 40 other women. I had no family, no security, no future." Maggie kept her voice calm, conversational, as if discussing the weather. "Here, I have honest work. A roof over my head. 4 children who need me. So yes, Mrs. Whitmore, it's a step up." The women around Harriet shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't the response they'd expected. The shame, the stammering, the tears. "How inspiring." Harriet recovered quickly. "A factory girl who's grateful for scraps. I'm sure Tom appreciates your low standards." "What Tom appreciates," a voice said from behind Maggie, "is someone who works hard and treats my children with kindness. Which is more than I can say for most folks around here." Tom stepped up beside her. His hand came to rest at the small of her back. The gesture was subtle but unmistakable. Protective, proprietary. "Tom?" Harriet's tone shifted, became sweeter. "I was just getting to know your new employee." "She's not my employee. She's part of my household." Tom's voice was flat. Dangerous. "And if you've got something to say about her, you can say it to me. I'm merely concerned for your welfare and your children's." Harriet's eyes narrowed. "Bringing a stranger into your home." "Maggie isn't a stranger. Not anymore." Tom's hand pressed more firmly against Maggie's back. "She's proven herself 10 times over. She's earned her place. And anyone who insults her insults me." The hall had gone quiet around them. People were watching openly now, abandoning any pretense of discretion. Harriet's face had gone red, her composure cracking. "Well, I can see you've been thoroughly convinced of her virtues." "I've been convinced by her actions, which is more than I can say for words from people who've never worked a hard day in their lives." Tom nodded curtly. "Now if you'll excuse us. I promised my children some punch." He guided Maggie away, his hand never leaving her back. Behind them she could hear the eruption of whispers. But she didn't care. Her heart was pounding. Her skin was warm where Tom touched her. You didn't have to do that, she said quietly. Yes, I did. It'll make things harder for you, publicly defending me like that. I don't care. He stopped, turning to face her. Listen to me, Maggie. Those people, their opinions don't matter. What matters is what happens in our home. What matters is that my children are happier than they've been in 2 years. What matters is that you've given us something we'd forgotten we could have. What's that? Hope. His voice was rough, almost angry. You've given us hope, and I'll be damned if I let anyone take that away. Maggie didn't know what to say. She stood there looking up at this man who'd stepped forward when everyone else had turned away and felt something crack open in her chest, something she'd kept locked tight for years. Pa! Ben's voice shattered the moment. They've got cookies, big ones with sugar on top. Can I have one? Can I have 3? Tom stepped back, the intensity fading from his expression. 1, maybe 2 if you behave. I'll behave. I'll behave so good. The boy raced off toward the refreshment table, and the strange tension between Maggie and Tom dissipated into the normal chaos of managing children. But something had changed. Maggie felt it in the way Tom's eyes kept finding hers across the crowded room, in the way his hand had lingered at her back, in the way he'd said her name Maggie like it meant something more than just letters strung together. Dangerous thoughts. Practical arrangements didn't include feelings like these. But as the evening wore on, practical became harder and harder to remember. The music started near 8 o'clock. A fiddle and guitar playing folk tunes that set feet tapping throughout the hall. Children ran in circles. Couples took to the dancing area. Rosie tugged at Maggie's hand. Dance with me. Dance with me. Maggie laughed and lifted the little girl, spinning her in circles until they were both dizzy. Jack demanded his turn next silently by pulling at Maggie's skirt and pointing at his feet. Then Emmy, who moved with unexpected grace. Even Ben allowed himself to be pulled into a clumsy jig that left him red-faced but grinning. Then the music changed. Slower, more intimate. Partner dance, the fiddler called. Grab your sweetheart and hold him close. Maggie started to retreat to the edge of the room, but a hand caught her elbow. Dance with me. Tom's voice was low, almost uncertain. If you're willing. She should say no. This was exactly the kind of thing that would feed the gossip. Confirm their suspicions. Blur the lines of their practical arrangement beyond recognition. Yes, she heard herself say. I'm willing. He led her onto the floor, one hand at her waist, the other clasping hers. They were close, closer than they'd ever been, and Maggie could feel the heat of him through her dress. Could smell wood smoke and leather, and something underneath that was just Tom. I'm not much of a dancer, he admitted. Neither am I. Then we'll stumble through together. They moved slowly, finding a rhythm that was more shuffle than waltz. Around them, other couples glided with practiced ease. But Maggie barely noticed. Her whole world had narrowed to this Tom's hand warm on her back, his eyes locked on hers, the impossible intimacy of moving together in a room full of people. Maggie. Yes. These past weeks, having you here. He struggled for words. It's been the first time I felt like I could breathe since Sarah died. Tom? I didn't expect that. Didn't want it at first. Felt like betrayal. Letting someone else into the space she left. He pulled her slightly closer. And now I think maybe she'd understand. Maybe she'd want me to stop just surviving and start living again. His thumb traced a small circle on her back. The gesture was somehow more intimate than a kiss. You make me want to live again, Maggie. I don't know what to do with that. I don't know either, she admitted. This wasn't supposed to be, I wasn't supposed to, I know. His eyes searched her face. But here we are. Here we are. The song ended. They stood there for a moment, neither willing to step apart before the reality of their surroundings crashed back in. People were watching. Children were calling. The world beyond their small circle continued to exist. Tom released her slowly. His hand lingered on hers before falling away. "We should check on the children," he said. "Yes, we should." Neither of them moved. "Pa!" Ben's voice cut through high and urgent. "There's a man asking about Miss Maggie. A fancy man from the east." Maggie's blood turned to ice. She spun toward the entrance and saw him. William Crawford, in a coat that cost more than most people earned in a year, his eyes scanning the crowd with predatory patience. When those eyes found her, his lips curved into a smile that made her stomach turn. "There you are, Mara." He'd always called her that, a corruption of her name that she hated. "You've led me quite a chase." Maggie couldn't move. 3 weeks. She'd had 3 weeks of peace, 3 weeks of building something new. And now here he was, poisoning it all with his presence. Tom stepped in front of her, blocking William's view. "Who the hell are you?" "William Crawford, Philadelphia." William moved closer, his movements casual, confident, a man who'd never been denied anything he wanted. "And you must be the rancher who's been housing my property." "Your property?" "Maggie worked for me. Left rather abruptly, actually." William's smile didn't waver. "Stole some things on her way out. I've come to collect what's mine." "I didn't steal anything." Maggie forced the words past the terror closing her throat. "I took what was mine and left. The dress you wore, I bought it. The shoes on your feet, mine as well. And the debt you incurred during your employment room board training." William's smile widened. "That certainly hasn't been repaid. She's not going anywhere with you." Tom hadn't moved. His body was a barrier between Maggie and her nightmare. "And I don't know what game you're playing, but it ends now. This is a private matter between myself and my former employee. There's nothing private about a man stalking a woman across the country. There's nothing private about making up debts to force someone into servitude." Tom took a step forward, and something in his posture made William take a step back. "I know men like you. I've seen what you do to people who can't fight back. But Maggie's not alone anymore. She's got a home. She's got family. And if you want to take her, you'll have to go through me." William's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing the fury beneath. "You don't know what you're involving yourself in." "I know enough." The hall had gone completely silent. Every eye fixed on the confrontation, every ear straining to catch every word. Maggie stepped out from behind Tom. Her legs trembled, but her voice held steady. "I left your employment because you made it clear that employment wasn't all you wanted from me. When I refused, you threatened to destroy my reputation, make sure I could never work again." She faced William directly. "So I ran. You don't own me. You never did. And whatever story you've invented about debts and theft, these people know me now. They've seen who I am. Your lies won't work here." "They don't know you at all." William's voice had gone silky, dangerous. "They know the version of you that's been playing house for a few weeks. They don't know what you really are." "And what am I?" "A woman who rises above her station. A woman who takes what isn't hers. A woman who needs to be reminded of her place." He smiled. "I've taught that lesson before. I can teach it again." Tom moved so fast Maggie barely saw it. One moment he was standing beside her. The next he had William by the collar, his fist cocked back. "You threaten her again," Tom said quietly, "and I'll break your jaw. That's not a warning. That's a promise. Unhand me." William's composure had finally cracked, his face flushing with fury and fear. "I'll have you arrested. You'll leave." This new voice came from near the entrance. Deputy Marshal Henry Cole pushing through the crowd with purpose. "Right now, tonight. And you won't come back." "On what authority?" On the authority of me being tired of your kind showing up and causing trouble. Cole stopped beside Tom, his hand resting casually on his holstered pistol. I've sent telegrams, Mr. Crawford. Philadelphia police have been looking for a man matching your description. Seems you have a pattern. William's face went pale. Those are baseless accusations. Maybe, maybe not. But I figure if I hold you here while they sort it out, we'll find the truth eventually. Cole smiled, and it wasn't friendly. Or you can leave tonight. Get on the first stagecoach out. Never show your face in Wyoming again. Your choice. The silence stretched. Maggie watched William calculate. Watched the fury war with self-preservation behind his eyes. This isn't over, William said, finally shaking free of Tom's grip. You'll regret this, Mara. All of you will. It is over, Maggie said quietly. You just haven't accepted it yet. William stared at her for a long moment. A look of pure hatred that made her skin crawl. Then he turned and walked out into the night, the door slamming behind him. Maggie's legs gave out. Tom caught her before she hit the floor. His arms wrapped around her, holding her up when she couldn't hold herself. It's all right, he murmured against her hair. It's all right. He's gone. You're safe. He'll come back. Her voice was barely a whisper. He always comes back. Then we'll be ready, together. Tom pulled back to look at her face, his hands cradling her cheeks. You're not alone, Maggie. Whatever comes, you're not alone. Around them, the crowd began to murmur. Process. Recover from the spectacle they'd just witnessed. Maggie was dimly aware of Sam gathering his younger siblings, of Martha pushing through to check on her, of Harriet Whitmore standing white-faced near the wall for once without anything to say. But mostly, she was aware of Tom, his hands on her face, his eyes locked on hers, his promise hanging in the air between them, not alone. She'd been alone her whole life, had learned to expect nothing else. But here now with this man and his children and the home they were building together, maybe alone wasn't her future anymore. Take me home, she said. Please, Tom. Take me home. He nodded, wrapped his arm around her waist, taking her weight. Home it is. They walked out together into the cold night air, the children following in worried silence, the twins clutching each other's hands, Emmy holding Jack. Sam bringing up the rear, his young face set in protective determination. A family, battered and scared and imperfect, but a family nonetheless. And somewhere in the darkness, watching from a rented sleigh on the ridge above town, William Crawford sat with murder in his eyes. He had been humiliated, threatened, run out of town like a common criminal. And William Crawford did not forget. He did not forgive. Maggie Sullivan would learn that lesson soon enough. 3 days passed without incident. Maggie tried to convince herself that William had left, that the humiliation at the social had been enough to drive him back to Philadelphia where he belonged. But she knew better. She'd seen his face when he walked out. Men like William didn't retreat. They regrouped. She said nothing to the children about her fears. They'd been shaken enough by the confrontation. And Christmas was 2 days away. They deserved joy, not more worry. But Tom knew. He saw it in the way she checked the locks 3 times before bed, in the way she startled at unexpected sounds, in the shadows that haunted her eyes even when she smiled. He's still out there, she admitted on Christmas Eve morning. They stood in the kitchen, the children still asleep, the fire crackling low. I know he won't give up, not until he's made me pay for defying him. Then we stay ready. Tom's hand found hers. I've told Henry Cole to keep eyes open, warned the neighbors to watch for strangers. If he tries anything. When? Maggie's voice was flat. When he tries something. Tom's jaw tightened. When he tries something, we'll be prepared. Maggie turned her hand over, lacing her fingers through his. The gesture had become natural between them. These small touches, these quiet intimacies, that had nothing to do with their original arrangement and everything to do with what was growing in its place. "I don't want to bring danger to your family," she said quietly. "If something happened to the children because of me, nothing's going to happen to them. You can't promise that." "No, but I can promise that whatever comes, we face it together." He squeezed her hand. "You're not running again, Maggie. Not from him. Not from us. This is your home now. We protect what's ours." Christmas Eve passed in a blur of preparation. Maggie had been baking for days, cookies and pies, and fresh bread enough to feed an army. The children had decorated the house with pine boughs and handmade ornaments. Their excitement was infectious, filling every corner with warmth. "Do you think it'll snow more?" Ben asked, pressing his nose against the window. "I want enough snow for a fort, a big one." "Yeah. I think you've got plenty already." Maggie laughed, pulling him back from the frosted glass. "Now come help me with these cookies." The twins were beside themselves with anticipation. Rosie had made a special bed for Annie near the fireplace so Santa could see her. Jack had drawn a picture, his first voluntary communication in days, showing stick figures of the whole family standing in front of a house. He'd labeled them carefully in wobbly letters. Pa, Sam, Emmy, Ben, Rosie, Jack. And at the end, holding hands with the others, Mama. Maggie had to leave the room when she saw it. Tom found her in her small bedroom crying silently, the drawing clutched to her chest. "He called me Mama," she whispered. "He's never called me anything." "He hasn't spoken since Sarah died." Tom's voice was rough. "Not one word in 2 years, and now this. I don't deserve—" "Yes, you do." Tom crossed to her, cupping her face in his hands. "You deserve every bit of it. You've earned it, Maggie. With every meal you've cooked, every tear you've dried, every nightmare you've soothed. You're their mother now, whether you plan to be or not." "And you?" The question escaped before she could stop it. "What am I to you?" Tom was quiet for a long moment. His thumbs traced her cheekbones, wiping away tears. "You're the woman who walked into my broken house and made it whole again. You're the woman who taught my children to hope. You're the woman who makes me feel like maybe I don't have to be alone anymore." His voice dropped. "You're everything, Maggie. Everything I didn't know I was missing." He kissed her. Not on the forehead, not on the cheek. On the mouth, soft and questioning at first, then deeper when she responded. Maggie melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. Two people who'd been alone for so long finally finding each other. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Tom pressed his forehead to hers. "I'm going to ask you something," he said quietly. "Not today, not tomorrow, but soon. And when I do, I need you to know I'm asking because I love you. Not because I need a housekeeper, not because the children need a mother, because I love you. Tom. Just tell me there's a chance. That's all I need to know right now." Maggie looked up at him. This man who'd stepped forward when no one else would, who'd defended her against gossip and protected her from her past, who'd let her into his home and his children's hearts, and impossibly into his own. "There's a chance," she said. "More than a chance." His smile transformed his weathered face, made him look younger, hopeful. That's all I needed to hear. The afternoon faded toward evening. Tom went to check on the livestock one final time before the Christmas Eve celebration. Sam went with him, the two of them working in the easy silence of father and son. Ben was supposed to be helping Emmy wrap gifts, but kept sneaking into the kitchen to steal cookies. Maggie was rolling out dough for tomorrow's Christmas dinner when Rosie appeared at her elbow. "Miss Maggie." "Yes, sweetheart." "There's a man outside, by the barn." Maggie's hands went still. "What kind of man?" "A fancy man. He's wearing a big coat. He's just standing there, looking at the house." The rolling pin clattered to the floor. "Rosie, where's Jack?" "Playing with his string by the fire." "Go get him. Take him and Ben and Emmy to your room. Lock the door. Don't come out until your pa or I tell you it's safe." "But, now Rosie, please." Something in Maggie's voice must have reached the child. Rosie's eyes went wide and she ran. Maggie grabbed Tom's rifle from above the fireplace. Her hands were shaking, but she'd learned to shoot in the weeks since arriving. Tom had insisted. "Every person in this house needs to know how to defend it," he'd said. She'd never been more grateful for those lessons. She moved to the window, peering out through the frost. There he was, William Crawford, standing in the snow between the house and the barn. Watching, waiting, and behind him smoke. The barn was on fire. "No!" Maggie burst through the door, the cold hitting her like a physical blow. She could see flames now licking up the barn walls, hungry and growing. Tom, Sam, they were in there, with the horses, with the cattle. She ran. William stepped into her path. "Not so fast, Mara." She raised the rifle. "Get out of my way." "You won't shoot me." His smile was confident, cruel. "You're not a killer. I'm a woman protecting her family. Move." "Your family?" William laughed. "This isn't your family. This is your hiding place. A temporary shelter you've been using while you wait for the next opportunity." He took a step closer. "I know you, Mara. I know what you are. A user. A climber. A woman who'll spread her legs for anyone who can give her what she wants." The rifle didn't waver. "You don't know anything about me. You never did." "I know everything. I know you've been playing house with this rancher, making him think you care about his broken children and his dead wife's memory. But we both know the truth. You'll leave eventually, just like you left me." "I didn't leave you. I escaped you." "Same thing." William's eyes glittered with hatred. "But you can't escape me, Mara. Not ever. I'll follow you to the ends of the earth. I'll burn down everything you try to build. The barn door burst open. Tom emerged through the smoke, dragging Sam by the collar. Both of them were coughing, covered in soot, but alive. Alive. "Maggie." Tom's voice was hoarse. "The horses, they're still in there. I'll get them." Sam pulled free of his father's grip. "Pa, I can do it. I know where they are." "No!" But Sam was already running back into the burning barn. Maggie's heart stopped. "Sam?" She moved without thinking. Past William, who grabbed for her and missed. Toward the barn, toward the flames, toward the boy who'd finally started to trust her. "Maggie, don't—" She didn't listen. The heat hit her first. Even through the winter cold, even from feet away, the heat was immense, suffocating, alive. She plunged into the smoke. "Sam, Sam, where are you?" She could hear the horses screaming, could hear the crack and groan of burning timber, could hear her own heartbeat thundering in her ears. "Here." Sam's voice somewhere to her left. "I've got Storm." But the door's stuck. Maggie found him through the smoke. The boy was struggling with a stall latch, one hand gripping the horse's halter, his face white with terror. "Move!" Maggie grabbed a pitchfork, using it as a lever. The latch groaned, held. She threw her whole weight against it. The latch snapped. The horse bolted. Sam stumbled after it, Maggie grabbing his arm, pulling him toward the door. A beam cracked overhead. Maggie looked up, saw it splitting, saw flames eating through its center, saw it starting to give way. She shoved Sam as hard as she could. "Run!" The beam came down. Pain exploded through her shoulder. She smelled burning fabric, heard Sam's scream mixing with her own. Then she was rolling, scrambling someone's hands on her arms, dragging her toward the rectangle of gray light that meant escape. She burst into open air and collapsed into the snow. Tom was there, beating at her shoulder with handfuls of snow extinguishing flames she hadn't known were there. "Maggie, Maggie, talk to me." "Sam, where's Sam?" "He's fine. He's right here. You pushed him clear." She turned her head. Sam was on his knees beside her, his face streaked with tears and soot. "You saved me," the boy was saying. "You ran into a fire for me. Why? Because you're mine." The words came out ragged, broken. "You're my son. Maybe not by blood, but mine all the same. And I'll walk through fire for what's mine." Sam broke. The 14-year-old boy who'd watched his mother die, who'd built walls so high no one could reach him, who'd pushed away everyone who tried to take her place, that boy crumpled. "Ma," he sobbed, throwing his arms around her. "Ma, don't die. Please don't die. I can't lose another mother. I can't." Maggie held him through the pain. "I'm not dying. I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. Promise. Promise." Behind them, the barn roof collapsed with a roar that shook the ground. But the horses were safe. The cattle had been moved to the far pasture that morning. And most importantly, they were all alive. Tom helped her up, his hands gentle despite the urgency in his eyes. "We need to get you inside. That burn needs—" "William." Maggie pulled away. "Where's William?" They turned. William Crawford stood at the edge of the property watching the barn burn. His face was illuminated by the flames and the expression on it was triumph. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he called. "Fire purifies. Fire cleanses. Fire shows what's really important. You did this." Tom's voice was ice. "You set my barn on fire. Prove it." "I don't need to prove it." Tom started toward him, his fists clenched. "I just need to end you." "Tom, no." Maggie caught his arm. "That's what he wants. He wants you to attack him, wants witnesses, wants to play the victim." "She's right." Henry Cole's voice came from the darkness. The deputy marshal emerged from the tree line, his pistol already drawn. "Been watching from the ridge since sunset, saw the whole thing." William's face went pale. You have no evidence." "I have eyes." Cole moved closer. "Saw you set the fire. Saw you wait for the family to go inside. Saw you position yourself so they couldn't get to the barn in time." The deputy's voice hardened. "You want to know what the sentence is for arson in Wyoming territory, Mr. Crawford? Especially when there are children involved? This is ridiculous. I'm a businessman from Philadelphia. I have connections, lawyers, money. None of that matters here." Cole reached for his handcuffs. "Turn around." William's mask finally cracked. The charming facade, the polished exterior, it all fell away, revealing the monster beneath. "You can't do this," he screamed. "She belongs to me. She's mine. You can't take what's mine." "I never belonged to you." Maggie stepped forward, her burned shoulder screaming in protest. "I was never yours. And now I belong to them. To this family. To this home. And you can't touch me anymore." William lunged at her. Tom moved faster. The punch connected with a crack that echoed across the snow. William went down hard, blood streaming from his nose. "That's for touching my barn," Tom said coldly. He hit him again. "That's for threatening my family." A third blow, this one sending William sprawling. "And that's for every time you made Maggie afraid." "Tom." Maggie touched his arm. "Tom, stop. He's done. It's over." Tom stood over William, breathing hard, his knuckles bloody. For a long moment, he didn't move. Then he stepped back. "Get him out of here," he told Cole. "I don't care where he goes, as long as it's away from my family." Cole hauled William to his feet. The Philadelphia businessman was crying now. Broken, pathetic, all his power stripped away. "You'll regret this," he mumbled through blood and tears. "You'll all regret this." "I don't think we will," Maggie said quietly. "Goodbye, William." She watched as Cole led him away. Watched until they disappeared into the darkness. Watched until she was sure, completely sure, that he was gone. Then her legs gave out. Tom caught her. Of course he did. He always caught her. "Let's get you inside." he murmured against her hair. You need that shoulder looked at. The children are fine, scared but fine. Emmy kept them all in the room like you told her. They're safe because of you. He carried her into the house. The children were waiting, all 5 of them. Rosie ran to her first, throwing small arms around Maggie's legs. You're hurt. You're bleeding. I'm okay, sweetheart. I'm okay. You saved Sam. Emmy's voice was thick with tears. We saw from the window. You ran into the fire and you saved Sam. That's what family does, Maggie said simply. We protect each other. Jack pushed through his siblings. He stood in front of Maggie, his small face solemn. Then he reached up and touched her uninjured cheek. Mama, he said, his first word in 2 years. Maggie's tears came then. She couldn't stop them. 2 years of silence broken for her. 2 years of grief and fear and loss ended with a single word. Yes, baby. She pulled him into her arms, ignoring the pain in her shoulder. I'm your mama now. Forever. Sam stood apart from the others. His face was still streaked with soot and tears. Miss Maggie. Maggie, she corrected gently. Or Ma if you want. The boy's face crumpled. Ma, I'm sorry. For everything. For being so, for pushing you away, for... Come here. He came. And she held him to this boy who'd become her son in every way that mattered. Tom stood watching, his eyes bright with unshed tears. Well, he said finally, his voice rough, I reckon we've got ourselves a family. Maggie looked up at him, at this man who'd given her everything she'd never dared to dream of. I reckon we do. The barn was gone, ashes and embers cooling in the Christmas Eve snow. But as Maggie sat in the warm kitchen, her shoulder bandaged, her children gathered around her, she understood something profound. They could rebuild a barn. What they'd built tonight, what they'd proven in fire and fear and the desperate need to protect each other that couldn't be destroyed. That would last forever. Merry Christmas, Rosie whispered, climbing into Maggie's lap. This is the best Christmas ever. It is, Maggie agreed, pressing a kiss to the little girl's hair. It really is. Outside, the first stars of Christmas Eve appeared in the clearing sky, and inside, a family broken and healed, lost and found, forged in fire, and bound by love, celebrated the miracle of being together. Christmas morning arrived with pale winter sunlight streaming through frost-covered windows. Maggie woke to the sound of whispers. Small voices trying desperately to be quiet and failing completely. Is she awake yet? Shh, you'll wake her up. But I want to show her. Ben, I swear to God. Maggie smiled despite the throbbing in her shoulder. She'd fallen asleep in the rocking chair by the fireplace, the twins curled against her sides, refusing to let go, even in sleep. Sometime during the night, someone had draped a blanket over all 3 of them. Tom, she thought. It had to have been Tom. I'm awake, she said softly. The twins stirred. Rosie's eyes flew open first, followed by Jack's. Mama, Rosie scrambled up. It's Christmas, Santa came. There's presents. Jack nodded vigorously, his thumb popping out of his mouth just long enough to point toward the tree. Well then. Maggie stretched carefully, wincing as her bandaged shoulder protested. I suppose we should go see. The morning that followed was chaos in the best possible way. Emmy had knitted scarves for everyone, slightly uneven, but made with love. Ben had carved small animals from wood, each one recognizable despite his still developing skills. The twins had made drawings for each family member, complete with wobbly hearts and stick figure families. Sam approached Maggie last, holding something behind his back. I made this, he said, his voice rough. Before I knew you were staying. I was going to throw it away, but now... He held out a small wooden frame. Inside was a piece of paper with careful handwriting. Our family rules, Maggie read aloud. Rule 1. We don't give up on each other. Rule 2, we say what we feel even when it's hard. Rule 3, we protect each other no matter what. Rule 4, we're allowed to miss Ma and also love new people. Rule 5, Maggie is our mama now. She earned it. Her vision blurred with tears. Sam? I meant it. Every word. The boy's jaw tightened. You ran into a burning building for me. You took a falling beam so I could escape. That's not something a hired housekeeper does. That's something a mother does. Maggie pulled him into a fierce hug. Thank you for giving me a chance, for letting me earn it. Thank you for not leaving. Tom watched from the doorway, his expression soft in a way Maggie had never seen before. When Sam pulled back and joined his siblings examining their gifts, Tom crossed to her. I have something for you too. Tom, you didn't have to. I wanted to. He pressed a small box into her hands. Open it. Inside was a ring. Simple. Silver. With a small blue stone that caught the light like a piece of winter sky. It was my grandmother's, Tom said quietly. She gave it to my mother, who gave it to Sarah. Sarah always said it should go to someone who'd earned the right to wear it. His eyes met hers. You've earned it, Maggie. 100 times over. Is this? I'm asking you to marry me. His voice was steady, but she could see his hands trembling. Not because I need a housekeeper. Not because the children need a mother. Because I love you. Because you walked into my broken life and made it whole again. Because I can't imagine a single day without you in it. The children had gone silent. 5 pairs of eyes fixed on Maggie, waiting. Say yes, Ben blurted. Please say yes, I can't go back to Pa's cooking. Ben? Emmy elbowed him. What? It's true? Maggie laughed, a wet, tearful sound. Yes. Tom's face transformed. Yes. Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I'll stay forever. Yes to everything. He kissed her, then right there in front of the children, in front of the Christmas tree, in front of the future they were building together. The children erupted in cheers. Rosie danced around the room. Jack clapped his hands. Even Sam was smiling. When? Emmy asked breathlessly. When's the wedding? Tom looked at Maggie. I was thinking New Year's Day, fresh start. New year, new family. That's only a week away. Then we better get planning. The week between Christmas and New Year's passed in a whirlwind of activity. Word spread through Willow Creek faster than wildfire. The leftover bride was marrying the widower rancher. The woman nobody wanted had found a home after all. Martha from the general store arrived the day after Christmas with fabric for a wedding dress, insisting it was a gift. You've given those children their smiles back, she said, brushing aside Maggie's protests. That's worth more than any dress. Reverend Stone came to discuss the ceremony. His wife brought food enough to feed them for a week. And then, unexpectedly, Harriet Whitmore appeared. Maggie tensed when she saw the woman's sleigh pull up. Tom moved to stand beside her, his hand finding hers. I'll send her away, he said. No. Maggie squeezed his hand. Let me handle this. She met Harriet at the door. Mrs. Whitmore. Miss Sullivan. Harriet's face was pale, uncertain. I wanted to gloat. Tell me I told you so. Apologize. Maggie blinked. I'm sorry. I was cruel to you. At the church. At the social. Every time we've spoken, I've been cruel. Harriet's hands twisted together. I had no right. I knew nothing about you except that you were desperate, and I used that to make myself feel superior. Why? Harriet was quiet for a long moment. Because I was desperate once too. When I first came west, I had nothing. Nobody. I married Harold Whitmore because he was the only one who would have me, and I've spent every day since pretending I've always been respectable. Her voice cracked. I saw you standing in that church, and I saw myself 20 years ago. And instead of helping you, I tore you down. Because it's easier to mock weakness than admit you share it. Maggie studied the woman before her, saw the shame beneath the pride, the fear beneath the cruelty. "I forgive you," she said. Harriet's eyes widened. "Just like that? I've been hurt by worse people than you, Mrs. Whitmore, and I've learned that carrying grudges only weighs you down." Maggie opened the door wider. "Would you like to come in? I've got fresh coffee." Harriet hesitated. Then slowly she nodded. They sat in the kitchen, two women who'd started as enemies finding common ground and shared histories of hardship and survival. By the time Harriet left, she'd promised to help with the wedding decorations. "You're something else," Tom said, watching the sleigh disappear down the road. "She's been the queen of this territory for 20 years. Nobody stands up to her. And you just made her cry in your kitchen." "I didn't make her cry. She made herself cry." Maggie leaned against him. "People aren't always what they seem, Tom. Sometimes the cruelest masks hide the most broken hearts. When did you get so wise?" "Somewhere between the factory and the burning barn." New Year's Eve arrived cold and clear. The house had been transformed. Neighbors had brought food decorations goodwill. The smell of fresh bread and roasting meat filled every room. Maggie stood in her small bedroom, looking at herself in the cracked mirror, wearing the dress Martha had helped create. Simple cream wool. Warm enough for a winter wedding. Beautiful enough to make her feel like something more than the factory girl she'd been. A knock on the door. "Mama, can I come in?" It was Emmy holding something in her hands. "Of course, sweetheart." The girl entered, her expression nervous. "I wanted to give you something, before the wedding." She held out a small, leather-bound book, worn with age, precious with memory. "This was Ma's," Emmy said. "Her mama gave it to her when she got married, and her mama's mama gave it to her. It's supposed to pass to the bride." Maggie's heart clenched. "Emmy, I can't. This is too precious. That's why you should have it." Emmy pressed the book into her hands. "Because you'll take care of it. Because you understand what it means." She hesitated, then threw her arms around Maggie. "I'm glad you came. I'm glad Pa chose you. I'm glad you're our mama now." Maggie held her tight. "I'm glad too, sweetheart. More than you'll ever know." Another knock. Rosie's voice. "Mama, everyone's waiting. Coming." Maggie took one last look in the mirror. Touched her hair, her dress, the bandage still visible beneath her sleeve. Then she walked out to meet her future. The ceremony was held in the main room of the ranch house, too cold outside for anyone to stand comfortably in the snow. Reverend Stone stood before the fireplace. His wife sat at a small piano that had been borrowed from town. Neighbors filled every available space. Martha, the doctor, even Harriet standing awkwardly near the wall, looking like she wasn't quite sure she belonged, but grateful to be included. But Maggie only saw Tom. He stood at the front wearing his best clothes, clean but worn, practical but dignified. Sam stood beside him as best man, his young face solemn with the importance of the moment. The other children sat in the front row, Emmy clutching the recipe book, Ben bouncing with poorly contained excitement. The twins holding hands, their faces alight with joy. Maggie walked toward them, step by step, heartbeat by heartbeat. When she reached Tom, he took her hands in his. His palms were warm, calloused, steady. "You're beautiful," he murmured. "You're biased." "Absolutely. Doesn't make it less true." Reverend Stone cleared his throat. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the union of Thomas Jacob Harding and Margaret Ellen Sullivan in holy matrimony." The words washed over Maggie, traditional phrases she'd heard at other weddings, never imagining she'd hear them at her own. "The couple has chosen to write their own vows. Tom, you may begin." Tom squeezed her hands, took a breath. "Maggie, a month ago I walked into a church expecting to do my duty, to find someone practical who could help with my children and my home. I wasn't looking for love. I wasn't sure I believed in it anymore." His voice roughened. "But then I saw you standing there, chin up, fighting back, refusing to be broken by people who'd decided you weren't worth their time. And I thought, there's a woman who doesn't quit. There's a woman who fights for what matters. There's a woman I could spend my life beside. He brought her hands to his lips. I wasn't wrong. You've proven yourself in ways I couldn't have imagined. You've won over my children, stood up to people who tried to destroy you, walked into a burning building to save my son. His voice cracked. But more than that, you've made me believe again. In hope, in second chances, in the possibility that life could be more than just surviving. Tears were streaming down Maggie's face now. I promise to love you, Maggie, to protect you, to stand beside you, to be your partner in everything. Not because I have to, because I want to, because you're the best thing that ever walked into my life. And I thank God every day that I was wise enough to step forward and claim you. Reverend Stone turned to Maggie. Your turn. She took a shuddering breath. Tom, when I stood in that church waiting to see if anyone would want me, I wasn't hoping for love. I wasn't hoping for family. I was hoping for survival, a roof over my head, food in my belly, work to fill my days. That's all I thought I was worth. Her voice steadied. You proved me wrong. Not just by stepping forward, anyone could have done that, but by seeing me, really seeing me. Not as the leftover bride, not as the factory girl, not as the woman no one wanted. You saw someone worth choosing, worth defending, worth loving. She looked at the children, at Sam, who'd finally let her in, at Emmy, who'd shared her mother's recipe book, at Ben, who made her laugh every day, at the twins who'd called her mama before anyone else. Your children taught me what it means to be family. Your home taught me what it means to belong. And you, her voice broke, you taught me that it's never too late to start over, that wounds can heal, that love is worth the risk, even when you've been hurt before. She squeezed his hands. I promise to love you, Tom, to be a mother to your children, a partner in your work, a companion in your days. I promise to never quit on this family, no matter how hard things get, because you didn't quit on me when everyone else did, and that's a gift I'll spend the rest of my life honoring. Tom lifted her hand to his lips. No gift, he murmured. Just love. Reverend Stone was smiling. By the power vested in me by God and the Wyoming Territory, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Tom, you may kiss your bride. Tom didn't need to be told twice. He pulled Maggie into his arms and kissed her, really kissed her in front of God and their children and half of Willow Creek. She melted against him, tasting salt on his lips that might have been her tears, or his feeling the solid warmth of him, the promise of forever in his embrace. The room erupted in cheers. She's really our mama now, Rosie shouted. Forever and ever. Forever and ever. Tom confirmed, pulling back just enough to look into Maggie's eyes. Forever and ever. The celebration lasted well into the evening. Food was eaten, toasts were made. The children danced until they collapsed in exhausted heaps. Maggie danced with Tom, then with Sam, then with Ben, then with anyone who asked. Her shoulder ached, her feet hurt. She'd never been happier in her entire life. Near midnight, she slipped outside for a moment of quiet. The cold hit her immediately sharp and clean, but she welcomed it. She needed a moment to breathe, to process everything that had happened. The door opened behind her. You'll freeze out here. Tom wrapped a blanket around her shoulders and pulled her close. They stood together looking at the stars, brilliant pinpricks of light scattered across the vast Wyoming sky. Sarah used to do this, Tom said quietly. Stand outside at night, looking at the stars. She said they reminded her how small our problems really are, how the universe keeps spinning no matter what happens to us. Do you think she'd approve of me? I know she would. His arm tightened around her. She'd love you, Maggie, for your strength, your stubbornness, the way you love our children. She'd be grateful I found someone worthy. I hope I can live up to her memory. You already have. Not by replacing her, nobody could do that, but by building something new alongside what she created. He turned her to face him. The children told me something today. They've decided to call you Mama full-time, not Miss Maggie, not Mama Maggie, just Mama. Fresh tears sprang to Maggie's eyes. That's everything. Good. Because those 5 kids in there, they've chosen you just as much as I have. You're ours now, Maggie Harding. For better or worse, richer or poorer, sickness and health. And you're mine, she whispered. All of you, forever. They stood in silence for a long moment, the first minutes of the new year ticking by around them. What are you thinking? Tom asked. Maggie looked at the house behind them, at the warm light spilling from windows, at the shadows of people dancing inside, at the family waiting for them. I'm thinking about the day I arrived in Willow Creek, standing in that church with nothing. No money, no home, no hope. Just a stubborn refusal to give up. She leaned into Tom's warmth. I thought that was the worst day of my life, but it was actually the best, because it led me here. To you, to them, to everything I never dared to dream. And now I have everything. She turned in his arms, cupping his face in her hands. A husband who loves me, children who need me, a home that's mine, a future worth fighting for. She smiled. A month ago, 26 men looked at me and saw nothing worth wanting. But you saw something else, something worth saving. I saw the woman I was going to love for the rest of my life. Tom kissed her forehead. I just didn't know it yet. Do you know it now? I know it now. I'll know it tomorrow. I'll know it every day for the rest of forever. The door burst open behind them. Mama, Papa? Rosie's voice was urgent. Jack talked again. He said a whole sentence. They hurried inside. Jack stood in the middle of the room, his small face flushed with the effort of breaking 2 years of silence. The other children had gathered around him waiting. What did you say, sweetheart? Maggie knelt before him. Can you say it again? Jack took a deep breath. His thumb came out of his mouth. I said. His voice was rusty, uncertain, but clear. I said, Happy New Year, family. All of us, together. The room went silent. Then Ben whooped. Emmy burst into tears. Sam picked up his little brother and swung him around. Rosie started dancing, pulling anyone she could reach into her celebration. And Maggie stood in the center of it all, her husband's arm around her waist, her children's laughter ringing in her ears, her heart so full she thought it might burst. Happy New Year, family, she whispered. All of us, together. Tom pressed a kiss to her hair. Forever. Forever, she agreed. Outside, the stars wheeled overhead. The old year faded into memory. The new year stretched before them full of promise and possibility. And Maggie Harding, the woman no one wanted, the leftover bride, the factory girl who'd fought her way across a country to find her place, finally understood what it meant to belong. Not because someone had chosen her, but because she had chosen them. And that choice, that fierce, deliberate, unshakable choice, had made all the difference. She was worth loving. She had always been worth loving. She just needed a family brave enough to see it.